Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for this week's micro webinar. We're going to talk about creating a branching scenario in PowerPoint. And it's pretty straightforward, but it's an interesting concept for those who are new with branching scenarios. So for this slide here, I chose this tree, this gnarly tree on purpose because I thought it was interesting and it kind of helps us to realize a linear presentation versus a branching presentation. Obviously a tree has many branches, and so by default, suppose there's a group of kids and they're trying to climb this tree, and everybody starts here at the bottom, at the space line here, and there might be a boy who climbs up and he has to make a choice. Do I want to go out on this limb here, or do I want to keep climbing over to the left? And so he chooses left, and then he makes another choice. I'm going to go out over here, and then there's just a lot of options. So maybe he'll come up this way, and he'll find himself eventually on this limb right here. Another student might start at the same point, make a few of the same decisions, but perhaps he wants to venture out this way, and he wants to go way back out here on this limb, and he ends up in a different route based on the choices that he made. And of course, girls can climb trees too, and they definitely do. So perhaps this little girl, she made a different choice right at the beginning. She says, I want to go out on this limb right here. And there are many choices, and so as she chooses, she goes behind that tree and she ends up at a different place as well. And it's an interesting scenario because at several points there are key decisions that people have to make, and they might end up in wildly different places based on these fundamental decisions. There's certain checkpoints where they have to choose one option versus another. And so one kid might end up here, one might end up on this tree, and or on that branch, and another might end up clearing a different area based on the route that they took. And so today, as we're talking about PowerPoint, typically the PowerPoint presentations are linear. That's the default, which means that you can go to the next slide or you can go back to the previous slide that you were just on, but you usually advance forward to the next slide. And that derives from the old slideshow carousels when you actually developed film into slides and you put them in this carousel and you had a remote and you could move forward or backwards, but it usually wasn't a scenario-based presentation. It was usually just going sequentially. So today we're going to explore this branching concept and how can we incorporate branching into PowerPoint. It's very interesting. So for today's micro webinar, I'm actually going to start out with a blank PowerPoint slide here. So you're welcome to follow along with me if you'd like. Otherwise, this will be a short 15-minute presentation. We'll have it recorded and up on our YouTube channel. You're welcome to ask questions or participate in the chat window at any time. I'll be monitoring that, and I have Mark Labbitt, one of the senior instructional designers, also facilitating, so he can answer questions as well if you have them. So this is going to be a very simple concept. Conceptually I'm going to show you, but there are other applications as well. And I'm essentially going to replicate one of the files that I share. So if you look in the handouts portion of GoToWebinar, you have two files that you can choose from. One is called Simple Branching Scenario. One is called Conditioning, which is it's still pretty simple, but it's a little bit more elaborate of a branching scenario. So you can feel free to download those if you'd like. So first of all, I have a title slide here, and I want to create a branching scenario. So I'm going to create buttons. The branching scenario, the whole point of the branching scenario is that it's based on choice. So you have to provide options on the screen for people to have choices. And so I'm going to create three buttons. Here's one. I'm going to hold Control on the keyboard as I select and drag this, and it'll make a copy. As opposed to not holding Control, it just moves it. But when I press the Control button, it actually makes a copy of that. So these are going to be my two buttons. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move one down here to the corner. This one, I'm going to align it right in the middle and center. Center is what I wanted. I'm going to hold Shift down and drag it so that it's right aligned with the left one. And you can see those markers. There's little dashed lines that indicates that it's right aligned with it. And this other one, I'm going to move so that it's aligned with those. And then as I scoot it to the right, I'm going to wait for that indication right there. You see those horizontal markers? That means that the space is equidistant from the space between these two, and the left two are equidistant. So now I have three buttons, and right now they're just shapes, but I'm going to make these into buttons. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new slide. Each of those buttons are going to go to a different slide. And so I'll go ahead and you can duplicate the slide or press Control D. What I'm going to do is, for one, these shapes have borders, so I'm going to make it so there's no outline. And then I actually like, if you bear with me 1 second, there's a color scheme. I like the old school color scheme, the 2007-9. So I'm going to select this one here, double click it, and it gets me to the Format tab. And I'm going to choose a red box for that one. I'll keep this blue, and this one here I'm going to choose a green box. So now I have red, green, and blue. I'm going to change these slides here in the design. I'm going to change the background color to red, green, and red, blue, and green. So this one I will choose blue, and this one here I will choose green. And what I'm doing right now, I'm formatting the background with a solid color. This isn't important. It's just to demonstrate that a red button is going to be associated with a red slide. A blue button will be associated with a blue slide, a green one to the green slide. And so that represents two levels of branching scenario. You start on the main page here, and based on what you choose, you're going to go to a second level. And later, we're going to create a third level as well. So I'm going to either right-click or press Control and K on the keyboard, and I'm going to click this hyperlink button. Now, instead of hyperlinking to an address on the internet or an email address, I'm going to click on a place in this document, and I can see all of the slides that I've created so far. And I'm going to choose slide 2 because that's the red one. And I'll do the same for these two. I'm going to click hyperlink, and this one will be hyperlinked to the blue one. And this green one, Control K on a PC, I'm going to link that to a green slide. Now, a little trick, if you want to preview the show, but you don't want to open the entire browser or the window, you can hold Alt while you press the slideshow button, and it'll give you a mini preview up here, so you can still see the thing. So I can click red. Now on the red slide I have nowhere to go, so since it's still a linear presentation, I'm going to click back. Now I'm going to click the blue button. Now I have to back out to the main menu, and then I click the green button. So we're getting there. That's a start. What we need now is some kind of way to go back home. Plus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these buttons. These are all hyperlinked. I'm going to just copy them, and I'll go to each slide, and I will paste them on there. Obviously, the red one's not going to show up there. The blue one and the green one. It looks like when I chose when I formatted them, I did format them with borders. So let me just take those borders off real quick. Shape outline, none. This green one, I'm going to go shape outline, none, just so it doesn't appear right there. Okay, so now we have hyperlinks within the pages. So let's preview that, see what that looks like. If I go from this home page to the green one, then I can bounce over to the red one, or to the blue one, or back to the red, back to the green. Okay, so we're getting some interaction there. And it looks like I need to, let me just ignore. I don't like that these have borders around them, but it's okay. I'll just ignore. I'll live with that for now. So what we want now is, once we're on one of these color slides, I want a way to get back to this home page. So I'm just going to go and search for an online picture. Let's see what we can come up with if I search for home. I'm going to look for some kind of home icon, and it looks like there's something good enough right there. So I'm inserting that. I'm going to make it small, and I'm going to put it up in the corner here. I'm going to double click on that because I think I want to change the color to maybe something more consistent with our theme. So maybe this purple accented color. All right, now let me hyperlink that so that it goes back to slide 1. Now you notice there are also additional places on the presentation that I can go to. I can go to the first slide, which is the same as slide 1. I can go to the last slide, next, previous, but I like linking it to particular slides, because if I ever need to change the order of the slides, then it remembers, okay, it goes specifically to this slide. And if slide 1 becomes slide 2, it's still linked to that original slide, which is now slide 2. So that's hyperlinked. Let's go ahead and copy that and drop it onto these other pages right there, and we'll go ahead and preview this. All right, so here's the home. I can go to red. From red, I can bounce to green. From green to blue, and then maybe back home. Let's check the home button on each of these. All right, so now I'm bouncing around. So that looks pretty fun. This is 2 layers then, or 2 levels of branching scenario. You have a main home page. From the home page, you choose one of these 3 options, which would be level 2. Now let's make a level 3. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this slide. I'm pressing Control D on my PC. Now I know I have a slide here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background from green to a solid color. I'll make a light green, and I will make a dark green. That's a little bit too dark. Let's go something like that. So now I have green, I have dark green, I have light green. All right, so let me change the color of this button to the light green. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm just going to place it right above there. And then for this button, I'm going to change this to a darker green. Now I need to change the hyperlinks. So Control K on my PC. I want to link this button to the light green. And this one I want to link to the dark green. And then I'm going to hop back over here, and these should already be linked to the regular green, slide 4. So what I have is on this slide, I can go home, I can go to the red slide, I can go to the blue slide, and then I have 2 more options, which will get me to a 3rd level, which is I'm already on the green slide, but do you want a light green slide or a dark green slide? And so those should work that way. So let's test this out. Let's go back home. So from home, I can go red, I can go green, I can go blue, home, green again. Now let's test out the light green and go back to the green, and then the dark green and go back to the green. And from either of these, I can go home, or I can go to any other color. So now we have a branching scenario, but if you notice, and let me do this on full screen, it might be faint. Actually, I can't do it on full screen because I don't think GoToWebinar is showing that. Might be faint, but if you notice on the lower left-hand corner here, you still have the traditional PowerPoint features, which I can zoom in, I can mark it up, I can go forward and backwards. And this is what concerns me is the going forward and backwards, because I want to eliminate that. And we're going to talk about how to eliminate that. I'm going to take a step back real quickly and address a question that somebody has, which is, how do you create these buttons in the first place? It's really simple. All I did is draw a shape. Any shape or picture can be a button. And so I can take, what I took is this rounded rectangle thing here, but it can be a square, it can be a circle, any shape. So this diamond shape, for example. So I drew the shape, and I can go to hyperlink, and I can make that go to the dark green slide, for example. And so now I've created a button that will take me to the dark green slide. And you can hyperlink a picture as well. So, I got some nice pictures of beaches. If I wanted to, I could say, okay, this beach is going to be hyperlinked to slide 2, the red one. And here's a trick. I know we're kind of at the end of the time. I have one more thing to show you, but I'm just going to pause and show you an interesting trick. Suppose I have this picture, and I can blow this up a little bit, and I want to hyperlink only this palm tree right here. Here's the trick that I would do. I would grab a circle and make the circle about that shape or so. And I'm going to hyperlink that over to slide 2. So for example, we click on this and it goes to slide 2. I'm going to go ahead and take out the outline. I don't really need the outline. And then the shape fill, I'm going to put white. Now I'm going to go to Format Shape. And over here at Transparency, I can make this more or less transparent. If it's a transparency of 0, that means it's a white circle. But if I move this out to 99, then it's 99% invisible. It's essentially invisible, but it's there, and you know it's there. look at this, and you can see as I hover over that palm tree is actually a button. The other stuff is not a button, but this is a button. If I click on that, it goes to red. So that's kind of an interesting trick, not something I was intending on showing, but kind of a fun thing. One last thing that I'm going to show, I'm going to hop over to slideshow, and I mentioned that, for example, if I just show this right now, and if I click anywhere, it'll go to the next slide. Anywhere it goes to the next slide, and that's just how PowerPoint is. If I click on the keyboards, I'm going to click the arrows back, and you can see it's going through sequentially, just using my keyboard. And I don't want that. I want to have people navigate by pressing the buttons. So I essentially want to disable the mouse and the keyboard, and disable the mouse for everything except for clicking buttons. So you do that by going into slideshow. By default, the slideshow is presented by a speaker, which means it's a PowerPoint presentation. What I want is a PowerPoint kiosk. And so I'm going to browse it, add a kiosk. And that disables the keyboard, and it disables the mouse for everything except for clicking on some element that is hyperlinked. And so if I go ahead and preview this now if I'm clicking everywhere, it's not working. I'm using the keyboard to go back and forward, and it's not working. So this PowerPoint is essentially stuck. It's stuck right here unless I do something interactive, which is click these buttons. So now I can bounce around, but if I click anywhere except for a navigation button, then I'm stuck. But if I click on home, then it works. So now I have a 3-level branching scenario. And I have if you want to download the file in the handouts folder in GoToWebinar, you can download a presentation similar to this that I made up, as well as another presentation. In fact, let me show you the other presentation that I have that you can download. Is something called, I called it conditioning, and so it talks about some stimulus and response. This is what the back end looks like. It's 15 slides, but when I play it, then it doesn't progress. It looks static. I can't click. I can't use my keyboard. But if I click on these things here, then I have an animation that comes up. And if I click on this one, then another animation comes up, and then I have, so that's 2 levels. I had a home screen, and then these are all the second level. And then I have a 3rd level, which is this examples button right here. If I press this, then it takes me to another thing where it's a description of something, and then I have a back button, which will take me back out to this slide. And then I can bounce around from one concept to another, and I can see various examples. So this is the 3rd level. It looks like I put a 4th level here. You can view a matrix, and this pops up. And then I have a button here, which is just an X. It's actually the multiply button, and I have it hyperlinked to go from this slide back out to this slide. And then this button is hyperlinked to go back out to this slide right here. So I can bounce around. So this is an example of a branching scenario, and this is pretty simple. But once you get the concept is simple, and it took me about 15 slides to do that. So at this point, I'm going to look through the questions. Let's see, do you put text inside a button? You can put text inside a button. So what you would do is when you're creating the shape, or if you've already created the shape, you can create a shape like this and just start typing button. And now the text is inside the button. What you don't want to do is create a shape and put a text box over the shape, because then that screws it up for many reasons. If the words are hyperlinked and it has a squirrely thing, you can alter this. If you want to make this bigger, if I want to make it big button, I can change the fonts, the colors. Oops. So you can make the buttons customized in that sense. You can use pictures as links too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and I think that question was asked before I showed. But yeah, you can drop any picture into a presentation and hyperlink that, and you can hyperlink text, images, pictures, shapes. All you do is right click on it. If you're on a PC, go to hyperlink and say where you want it to hyperlink to. Now you can hyperlink to an existing file or page, but and that might be important if you're teaching a course and you need to reference a government page, a .gov website. Yeah, you can hyperlink out to that, but I strongly suggest to keep everything within the PowerPoint, just because you want to keep the learner central here. You don't want them going out to the internet and getting lost and not coming back or forgetting that they need to come back. Just going through the questions. Can I use this branching facility within the TCSPP template? I don't see why not, why you couldn't use a template. All branching is a way that you can, instead of navigating sequentially, which is go next, 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 then you have them navigate around. And so I've had my students in courses create branching scenarios and submit them, and sometimes the assignment, or sometimes their task, they have a kiosk at a hotel, and it's a customer service kiosk, or an ATM. An ATM is a great example of a branching scenario because you're introduced with choices. Do you want to make a withdrawal? Do you want to do a deposit? Or do you want to check your balances? What you don't want to have to do is, okay, I need to make a withdrawal, so I know that's the 16th screen, so let me go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and go to the 16th screen. Like that would not make sense. You go, from here, I'm going to go to the withdrawal screen. Okay, how much do you want to withdraw? And so it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. And so, yeah, I suppose you can use a TCSPP template or a Saybrook template. Other questions here. Can you place a text box over a button? I said not to. Let me just show you why it's not a good idea to place a text box over a button. So here I'll have a button, and let me insert a text box over the button, and I'm going to put it right here. All right, button, I'm going to go ahead and center that. I'll make it, I'll make it a bit bigger. All right, so now I have to choose, I need to hyperlink this. Do I hyperlink the shape or the text box, or both? If I hyperlink the shape to slide 2, for example, then, and notice the dimensions of this text box. It's a little bit wide, it's a little bit tall. And now see my cursor it's an arrow, and then when it turns to a hand, that means it's hyperlinked. But as I hover over the text box and click on the text box itself, it's not hyperlinked, only the shape behind it is hyperlinked. And so if I come out here to the bottom or something, then that's hyperlinked, but this is not. Now you might think, okay, let's just hyperlink the text box itself though, or hyperlink the words. Like, well, yeah, we could do that. We can hyperlink that to slide 2 as well. But then that looks awful. It looks like a hyperlinked text. It doesn't look like a button. It looks like a shape that has hyperlinked text over it. And if I hyperlink that, the words there, notice the text box itself still isn't hyperlinked. The button is, the shape is behind it, the words are, but the text box itself is not. And so it just gets real complicated, but all you need to do is make a shape. You can modify the shape, click on it anywhere, and just start typing. And it'll type right within the shape, and then you can modify that. And that's just such a better practice than using a text box, because you'll notice now the entire button is hyperlinked. You can see my hand, the cursor turns into a hand, the words are not underlined, and it's just very clean. So it's very professional in that sense. From the presenter's point of view, what's the advantage of saving as kiosk versus a traditional slideshow? And Brett, thanks for asking that. Traditional slideshow, if you're talking about, I can save this as a slideshow, which is different than a PowerPoint presentation. So as I click Save As, I have a traditional PowerPoint presentation, which if I save that, you know what that does. It gives you the view that I was just seeing. Saving as a slideshow is different because if I save it as a show and try and open it up, pull that up, it opens up as only a show, and you don't see this back end. So by the back end, I mean the ribbons, all these ribbons up top, these thumbnails here, any boxes that I have open. Now, typically, you might go into a class and you might have your presentation loaded on the the USB drive and you open it up and you get to this, and then you have to click the slideshow button. But if I save it as a slideshow, let me pull this up over here. Then when I click on this, it opens up right to the show without having that back end thing, which you might not want that if you know that you have some last minute edits that you make before you do the slideshow. But otherwise, it's a really good practice to save it as a show, or to share it as a show, because then people click on it and they don't see the back end, they just jump right into the presentation and they're ready to rock and roll. And now the question was, how is that different? That's saving as a slideshow as opposed to a PowerPoint presentation. And then if I save this as a kiosk, the only thing the kiosk does is it disables the mouse and the keyboard, which is what I want if it's a purely branching scenario. But let me tell you that if you save it as a kiosk, every slide has to have some sort of navigation. And I can show you what happens if there is no navigation. Let me just, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to take all these buttons, I'm going to put them off to the side, and then show this presentation. I'll show it from that first slide there. Okay, so I'm bouncing around and it's great. I get to this red thing and there's nothing to click on. And so my presentation is stuck for all time and eternity. It's not going anywhere. It's stuck because there's no navigation button. And so that's the thing is, for kiosk, it's great that it forces people to navigate, but you just have to be responsible and know that every slide needs at least one navigation button on it, even if it's just that home button. So I could remove all these navigations and there's nothing to click on except for that home, so that's the only choice. Maybe this was an information slide, and instead of a home, you might have an X, kind of like a pop-up that you see on the internet, and you click the X and it takes you out to the main window. So yeah, just make sure that there's a place to navigate, and that's the difference between a kiosk and the presentation mode. And then we talked about the difference between a PowerPoint presentation and a PowerPoint show as files. So let me just work through some more questions. When we create our own, can we contact you if we have any questions or need assistance? Absolutely, yeah, just give me an email if you have questions. Let's see, can a video be hyperlinked is one of the questions, and I don't know. I don't know of any situation where a video really would be hyperlinked, but feel free to email me if you want to flesh out some ideas. Usually videos are meant to be played and viewed, and they're in a multimedia element on a page. Videos typically aren't navigation buttons, but I don't know. I mean, I guess YouTube videos are hyperlinked in a sense that when you finish and you get to the last 5 seconds, they have pop-ups and, hey, do you want to watch, like YouTube's like, you just watched the video, but we want you to keep watching more of our videos. Do you want to watch this one or that one or all these? And those are technically hyperlinked. So perhaps, if anything, you can put a white box that's 99 transparent over a video, over the actual video. And if you click on that, then the box can be hyperlinked. Just going through the questions more. How would you recommend we plan the outline or create an outline? There are different ways that you can do that. I believe I have a no, that wasn't it. I have an image somewhere of a branching scenario, but you can do it pen and paper. I mean, that might be a great place to start. Post-it notes everywhere. You can use smart art maybe if there's a what would that be? A hierarchy probably. So this can be the landing page, and then maybe you'll have and how do I get the text pane over here? Let me just get rid of that, and then you can have option 1 and option 2, option 3, and for ours, like if we're looking at this presentation, I did option 1 would be red, blue, green, and green had another option, so option 3.1 and option 3.2. So if you wanted, you could sketch it out like this within PowerPoint, but honestly, probably, I mean, you could do that in Word, in an outline format, or pen and paper, or a whiteboard. So there are a lot of ways. Essentially, what you're creating is kind of a mind map, and there's mind mapping softwares as well. And I wish I could point you to all kinds of mind mapping is just not something that I've done a lot of. But let's do a quick search. I know we're past our time. I usually try and wrap these up at 30, but we're having fun. So I'm just doing a search for mind mapping, and it looks like there's stuff here: Mind Genius, Mind Manager, Creately is stuff. I know there's stuff that I've worked with, and I just can't remember it. But Padlet might also be an interesting one if you make a Padlet that is free flow, or maybe this canvas is what I'm thinking of. It's not letting me select that for some reason. Let me refresh this real quick. Okay. Starting the Padlet. So Padlet's interesting because it gives you kind of a blank slate, and you could do Photoshop or Illustrator too if you knew. So you could say home page, and then you can have another one that's option 1. And how do we connect it? We link, no. I apologize, but there's some way that we can link these, that you can link these two together, and I'm just not thinking of it at the moment. And my internet's being weird. It's making me refresh the page. But I might even have an example on my, let's see, UX project ScreenFlow. I did a ScreenFlow. I might have to zoom out. This was a this wasn't exactly mind mapping for a branching scenario, but it is branching, and that we're working on a prototype for a faculty resource center. And so we had things branching from here. You go to Canvas training. From Canvas training, there are different sub pages. And so this is more like a website layout, but same concept. And so maybe you could map out through this. So Padlet would be one, and I'm sure a lot of these others are good as well, maybe even better. If you want to spend money, then there's Microsoft has Visio or Adobe XD, or the cheapest thing is a napkin, or like a piece of paper and pen. So another question is, and Mark answered this, thank you, but is what I'm sharing restricted to Saybrook use only, or I could say Pacific Oaks or Chicago School? This video, everything I'm sharing it's not like I invented the concept of branching scenario or anything. We'll record this, we'll put it on the YouTube channel, and everybody can access it, and you can, anybody can do branching scenario. All right, just reviewing the questions. All right, so Felice Mays was saying it's so if you show a video and then give 3 options for answers or scenarios about an action in the video, then you hyperlink to another slide with a text explaining why the next slide was correct or incorrect. Would that be better? You're getting sophisticated. This is really great, and there are lots of options, I think, to do something like that. So essentially, it's a choose your own adventure, but through video. And just thinking through, you could have something like this, where you play the video. So I would insert. How do I do that? I haven't put a video in a long time. Let's see, online. Let me just rickroll everybody. So suppose this is the video, and they watch the video, and they come to the end of the video, and then you can say, and you could even put maybe a text box. We're getting kind of creative here. um, based on the video, and sorry if my mic is right next to my keyboard, what would be the optimal response? And then these could be different responses. And I can format that, and I can have this, I wonder if I can have this animate, add an animation to fade in, at a certain delay. I could either delay it, or you can't animate it. I'm going to think out loud is I was thinking, what if this were to appear right after the video plays? But maybe not. Maybe I can just say start after like 15 seconds or something. And so then in 15 seconds they'll get this prompt, and you can even hide these buttons if you don't want people to if you don't want people jumping ahead, then you can say all of these, have these come in at about 15 seconds as well. Or maybe since that one's coming in at 15, I'll have these come in at 18 seconds. And then, let's see, format video. What I'm wondering is the playback. Can I have this play automatically? Start automatically. Okay. So if you start the video automatically and it's a 2-minute video, then you can have these boxes come up after 2 minutes, for example, and then from there they can go to different slides, and then you can have your message on those slides. So that would be interesting, I think. And there are other platforms. If you work with an instructional designer, then I can give a plug for instructional design. They have software such as Camtasia and Storyline that can be even more sophisticated, and that you can have they can have pauses and quizzes inserted into the video, and also Panopto. We all have access to Panopto in Canvas, and that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now in this. So I won't say anything except for plug for check out Panopto. We have a video. It's advanced features in Panopto on our channel, and we talk about things like that as well. Asking, oh, Virginia left, but she was asking, where do you find the kiosk again? Slideshow, you're going to set up the slideshow, and kiosk is the show type right here. So slideshow ribbon, set up slideshow, browse that kiosk. All right, just going through. So I think we're wrapped up. I think that's the end of the questions. Unless anybody wants to snipe in some last questions. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/tcsedtech. I can put that right in the chat window. Excuse me. And I want to wrap up by saying, well, thank you for everybody for coming, and for those who are still on. It looks like there's still a couple dozen people who have endured. I know I try and wrap these up quicker. This is a micro webinar, but just questions. I want to answer the questions. Next week we're having a webinar at the same time, Wednesday. This is 12 o'clock Central, 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific. It's going to be a Canvas town hall, and so we're going to have instructional design and ed tech present, and you can come ask about anything related to Canvas. If you want to do some troubleshooting, if you want to ask questions or explore features or learn about what the new features are. We're going to be on call for about an hour, and you can pick our brains, and we're going to be there for you. And it's an open forum, no structure, just come and go. The second Tuesday of October, we're actually not going to have an EdTech webinar because we're going to have a conference. We're sponsoring a conference at the Chicago School campus in Chicago. And hopefully you know about that and you're signed up for it. I'm going to put the link to that in the chat as well. Everybody's invited. It's going to be in Chicago, but we're going to stream it live and record it and put it up on our YouTube channel for afterwards. So anybody, if you're in California or Wisconsin or DC, then you can come attend. The agenda is up. We have a lot of good sessions, and it's going to be the whole day here. We're going to have an opening session talking about design thinking. We're going to learn about VR AR, mixed realities. We're going to learn about how to do engaging discussions, dynamic lecturing, best practices, and we're going to have a keynote from Instructure, which is the company that makes Canvas. She's flying in from their headquarters and going to address us for an hour. And also, right before that keynote, we're going to have a very special announcement. And I'm not even going to say anything about it other than you're going to want to dial in at the bare minimum at 1:50 to 3 Central Time to find out what we have in store for you, and it's very exciting. And so that will be in 2 weeks on October 10th. And so I want to thank you everybody again for attending, and I hope to see you in future sessions. Thanks.